The Catarian delegates snickered and jeered as humanity's primitive technology was put on display, ridiculing the human ambassador Charles Warren, not knowing that soon they'd be the ones begging for mercy on their knees before the might of Earth. Charles stood stoically in the grand Tarian summit hall on planet Tar, the sleek alien architecture looming over him, seeming to embody the Tarians' arrogant sense of superiority. He could feel the contempt radiating off the Tarian delegates, a physical force pressing against his skin. Altair, the Tarian leader, smirked condescendingly as he flicked through hollow projections, showing humanity's fledgling forays into space travel. These apes fancy themselves a spacefaring race? They've barely crawled out of their gravity well, and they presume to sit at the same table as us? His sycophants guffawed sycophantically. Charles gritted his teeth. As Earth's most experienced diplomat, he was used to alien species underestimating humanity. But the Tarians took it to a whole new level. Their advanced ships and planet-raising weaponry had allowed them to conquer a sizable chunk of the galaxy, and it had gone to their heads. "Your people have a long history of violence," Altair said, almost apropos of nothing. "It's a wonder you haven't blown yourselves up by now. But I suppose that's the best we can expect from glorified primates." Hot anger flashed through Charles, but he kept his face neutral. Earth needed allies and trading partners badly. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, their warp drives still new and shiny. This summit was humanity's chance to make a good first impression, to forge connections and gain a foothold. But the Catarians seemed determined to sabotage that. Their welcome had been peppered with disparaging remarks about humans' physiology, technology, and supposed lack of sophistication. An undertone of threat simmered beneath the surface, as if they were looking for an excuse to put the upstart humans in their place. "I would caution you not to underestimate us," Charles said evenly. "Earth may be young, but we learn quickly. Your arrogance may come back to bite you." Altair threw his head back and laughed. "The primitive dares to threaten us." The other Tarians joined in his laughter. Charles just smiled thinly. Let them laugh for now, he thought. Humanity was playing the long game. One way or another, the Tarians would come to respect humans, or regret dismissing them. The future of Earth's standing in the galaxy depended on it. Tensions ratcheted up to a boiling point when a massive Catarian warship dropped out of hyperspace and took up an aggressive posture in orbit around Earth. The menacing dagger-shaped craft dwarfed humanity's fledgling defense platforms, its weapons arrays glowing with barely restrained power. The warship was commanded by Zorgax, Altair's notoriously ruthless second-in-command. With a predator's gleam in his eyes, Zorgax watched his sensor displays hungrily as squadrons of Catarian fighters poured out of the carrier's launch bays and cut through Earth's atmosphere, brazenly violating humanity's territorial space. In the UN Earth Defense Council's Situation Room, alarms blared stridently as the invading ship loomed on the main view screen. Uniformed officers rushed about, shouting updates and orders. Charles Warren, face lined with fatigue from his long journey back from the disastrous diplomatic summit on Qatar, held up a hand for calm. I know every instinct is screaming at us to shoot first, but that's exactly what the Tarians want. To provoke us into a war we're not ready for. They're testing our defenses, trying to goad us into making the first move so they can crush us in retaliation. General Magnus, a barrel-chested bear of a man, slammed a fist on the table. So we're supposed to just sit back and let them buzz our cities? Thumb our noses while they make a mockery of our sovereignty? Charles fixed the general with a piercing stare. For now, yes. Hold your fire. There may be another way to get them to back off that doesn't risk millions of lives in an all-out war. As Catarian fighters streaked over Earth's cities and military bases, Charles worked his secure comms unit, reaching out to contacts and assets he had cultivated among the aliens he met at the summit. He needed allies badly, anyone who could put pressure on the Catarians. Finally, he secured a clandestine vidlink with a hooded figure, a sympathetic ambassador from the Ivorian Ascendancy. Her features were shrouded, but her voice thrummed with tension. The Tarians are not as powerful as they want you to believe, she murmured. Overextended, Troops tied down, putting down a major uprising on Zelos Prime, a world they conquered 2 cycles ago. The insurgents are hurting them badly, but lack numbers and weapons. If the rebels can bloody the Katarians' nose, it will force them to divert ships and soldiers from Earth to Zelos, Charles finished, mind racing ahead. Draw the pressure off us so we can regroup and build up our fleet. The Avorian nodded once, then cut the link. Charles strode back into the council's war room where a heated debate was underway. The Hawks, led by General Magnus, were pushing for an all-out strike on the Tarian vessel. The Doves urged capitulation to avoid Earth's destruction. Forestalling them with an upraised hand, Charles laid out what he had learned about the Zelosian uprising and proposed a bold plan: stage an incident to lure the Katarian warship to Zelos, then covertly send a small human strike team to arm the rebels, tie up enough Tarian forces to force them to back off Earth. It's a huge gamble, he admitted, but it's the only way to push back without a direct confrontation we can't win. Give the Katarians a bloody nose without sacrificing our fleet. If it works, we buy time and allies. I volunteered to lead the mission myself. The council exploded into argument, some decrying the risk, others demanding to know if they could trust the Avorian intel. Charles met each point calmly, laying out the desperate stakes, yet hope kindled in his eyes. This could work. It had to work. Just then, Zorgax's image appeared on the console, reptilian features smug with anticipated triumph as he delivered an ultimatum. People of Earth, this is your one chance to surrender peacefully and submit to the Katarian hegemony's benevolent rule. Resist, and your cities will burn, your armies will be crushed, your lands seized as ours. You have one of your hours to comply. The screen went dark. In the ringing silence, Charles Warren voiced the thought in every human's mind. So much for a diplomatic solution. Around the room, the council looked to him, a mix of fear and desperate hope in their eyes. Jaws set, Charles stood tall. No more debating, no more hesitation. It was humanity's chance to seize their destiny among the stars, or lose it forever. Give the order, he said grimly. We launch the operation, and may fate have mercy on us all. Charles Warren stood on the bridge of the stealth ship Shadowrunner, his face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. The small vessel hummed with tension as it slipped through the inky void of space, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Katarian sensors. Status report, Charles barked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Lieutenant Reeves, a seasoned Special Forces operative, responded crisply. We've cleared the Katarian defensive perimeter around Zelos Prime, sir. No sign of detection. Charles nodded, allowing himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. The Shadowrunner touched down in a desolate region of Zelos Prime, far from any Katarian outposts. Charles led his team through the alien landscape, the air thick with the acrid smell of recent battles. They moved silently, their stealth suits blending seamlessly with the environment. After hours of trekking, they reached the designated meeting point, a bombed-out structure on the outskirts of what was once a thriving Zelosian city. Charles activated his communicator, transmitting a series of coded pulses. Minutes ticked by. Then, from the shadows, a gruff voice spoke. You're either brave or stupid to come here, human. Trock emerged, his scarred face a roadmap of years of resistance. His eyes, hard as flint, scanned Charles and his team suspiciously. Charles met Trock's gaze unflinchingly. We're here to help, Trock. The Katarians are our common enemy. Trock scoffed. Help? Where was your help when they bombed our cities, when they enslaved our people? We couldn't intervene then, Charles admitted. But now we have a chance to strike back. Not just here, but across the Tarian Empire. He pulled out a data pad, displaying intelligence on rebel movements on other Katarian-controlled worlds. Trock's eyes widened as he scrolled through the information. How did you get this? He demanded. We have our ways, Charles replied, and we have more than just information. At his signal, members of his team brought forward crates of advanced weaponry, plasma rifles, shield generators, and compact explosives that put Katarian armaments to shame. Trock's demeanor shifted, a glimmer of hope replacing suspicion. This could change everything. As Charles briefed Trock on the plan, alarms blared on the Shadowrunner. Lieutenant Reeves's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, we're picking up a transmission from Earth. Zorgax has issued an ultimatum. He's threatening orbital bombardment if Earth doesn't surrender." Charles cursed under his breath. They were running out of time. He turned to Trock. "We need to move now. Hit their supply lines, their command centers. Make enough noise to draw their attention here." Trock nodded, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "We'll give them a fight they won't forget." Over the next hours, Charles coordinated a series of lightning strikes across Zealous Prime. Rebel cells, armed with human weapons and tactics, hit Katarian strongholds simultaneously. Explosions lit up the night sky as supply depots went up in flames. Katarian commanders, caught off guard by the sudden ferocity of the attacks, called desperately for reinforcements. On the bridge of his massive warship, Zorgax seethed as reports flooded in from Zelos Prime. His eyes narrowed as he received an encrypted transmission, coordinates for a human stealth ship spotted near the edge of the system. "Impossible," he snarled. "No human ship could, Warren, it has to be." Blinded by rage and the desire for revenge, Zorgax ordered his ship to break orbit around Earth, setting course for the coordinates. Charles watched from the Shadowrunner as the massive Katarian warship lumbered away from Earth, falling for his bait. He allowed himself a grim smile before turning to his pilot. "Take us out, Random Vector. Let's give Commander Zorgax a proper chase." The Shadowrunner darted away, leading Zorgax on a wild pursuit through the outer reaches of Zelosian space. Every time the Katarian commander thought he had the humans cornered, they would slip away, leaving him fuming. As the cat-and-mouse game unfolded, Charles received word of more uprisings on other Katarian-controlled worlds. The rebellion was spreading like wildfire, fueled by the hope of finally throwing off their oppressors. Zorgax found himself pulled in multiple directions, forced to divert ships and troops to quell revolts across his empire. His once mighty fleet was stretched thin, unable to decisively crush any single rebellion. Charles watched the tactical displays, noting with satisfaction as more and more Katarian ships peeled away from Earth to deal with the spreading chaos. The noose was tightening, and Zorgax was running out of moves. "Sir," Lieutenant Reeves reported, "Tarian comm chatter indicates they're struggling to maintain control on multiple fronts. They're not equipped for this kind of dispersed guerrilla warfare." Charles nodded. "Good. Keep monitoring. We're not done yet." The Shadowrunner continued its evasive maneuvers, leading Zorgax deeper into a trap of Charles's making. The human resistance and their alien allies pressed their advantage, slowly but surely turning the tables on the once invincible Katarian Empire. Charles Warren stood on the bridge of the Shadowrunner, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Katarian forces were spread thin, struggling to contain rebellions across their empire. It was time to strike at the heart. "Lieutenant Reeves, gather the team. We're going to hit Qatar itself." Reeves's eyes widened. "Sir, that's suicide. The Katarian homeworld is exactly where they won't expect us," Charles cut in. "Prepare the infiltration pods. We're going in as refugee workers." Hours later, Charles and his elite squad touched down on Qatar's surface, blending seamlessly with the throngs of displaced aliens seeking sanctuary. They moved through crowded streets, their eyes scanning for their contact. A hooded figure brushed past Charles, slipping a data chip into his hand. He palmed it, nodding imperceptibly. The dissidents were ready. Under cover of night, Charles's team split up, each targeting a critical piece of Katarian infrastructure. At a massive shipyard, Sergeant Wu planted explosive charges on fuel lines. In a weapons factory, Corporal Chen sabotaged assembly machines. Charles himself led the strike on the central fuel depot. He crouched behind a storage tank, watching Katarian guards patrol. "Now," he whispered into his comm. Explosions rocked the night. Alarms blared as fires erupted across the city. Charles sprinted forward, planting the final charges. As he ran, the depot erupted in a massive fireball. Across Qatar, and soon the Empire, Qatarian forces scrambled to respond. But it was too late. Their war machine was crippled. Back on the Shadowrunner, Charles initiated the next phase. He transmitted falsified intel about a rebel fleet massing in the Rigel system. "Send it on all Qatarian frequencies," he ordered. "Make sure Zorgax takes the bait." Sure enough, Zorgax's massive warship and a substantial Qatarian fleet abandoned Earth's orbit, racing toward Rigel. Charles allowed himself a grim smile. "Activate the transdimensional drives. Signal the battle group." The Shadowrunner flickered, shifting between dimensions. As they neared Rigel, Charles saw Zorgax's fleet arrayed for battle against a non-existent enemy. "Now!" Charles barked. Space itself seemed to tear open as the Earth battle group erupted from interdimensional folds. Caught completely off guard, the Qatarian ships were sitting ducks. "Fire the Hellbore cannons!" Beams of unimaginable energy lanced out, punching through Qatarian shields smoothly. Molecular disruptors followed, turning entire sections of enemy ships into expanding clouds of atoms. On his command deck, Zorgax howled in fury as his mighty flagship shuddered under the assault. "Impossible! No human ships could—" His words were cut off as another salvo reduced the bridge to molten slag. Charles opened a channel to all frequencies. "Attention, peoples of the galaxy. The Qatarian fleet has been defeated. Their myth of invincibility is over. To all those suffering under Qatarian oppression, now is the time to rise up." Across a dozen worlds, the message sparked revolution. Colonial uprisings became full-scale insurrections. Qatarian garrisons, cut off from resupply and reinforcement, found themselves besieged by newly emboldened rebels armed with human weapons and tactics. The remaining Qatarian ships, battered and leaderless, turned tail and fled toward their homeworld. But they would find no refuge there. Charles's strikes had left Qatar in chaos, its production facilities in ruins. As reports flooded in of Qatarian retreats and rebel victories, Charles allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The tide had turned. But the war was a long way to go, and Earth's future among the stars hung in the balance. Charles watched as the remnants of Zorgax's once mighty fleet limped back to Qatar. The Shadowrunner's sensors picked up frantic Qatarian communications, a cacophony of panic and disbelief. "They're in disarray," Lieutenant Reeves reported. "But, sir, we're picking up some concerning chatter. A hardliner named Altair is rallying support." Charles frowned, studying the intercepted transmissions. Altair's voice crackled through the speakers, filled with venom and rage. "We will not bow to these human vermin. The Qatarian Empire will rise again, stronger than ever." As they monitored the situation, Charles realized with growing horror the extent of Altair's plans. The Qatarian extremist had seized control, declaring emergency powers and calling for the complete annihilation of Earth. "He's gone mad," Charles muttered. He turned to his crew, his face grim. "We need allies, now." Over the next hours, Charles worked tirelessly, reaching out to contacts he'd cultivated across the galaxy. Former Qatarian client races, once neutral species who'd watched the conflict from afar, all were horrified by Altair's genocidal intentions. On the bridge of the Shadowrunner, Charles addressed the assembled holographic representatives. "The Qatarian threat isn't just to Earth anymore. Altair will burn the galaxy to ashes in his quest for vengeance. We must stand together." One by one, the alien leaders pledged their support. Ships from a dozen worlds joined the human fleet. A motley armada united against Altair's doomsday fleet. As they approached Qatar, the sensors lit up. Altair's forces filled the sky, a vast array of warships and planet killers. "All ships engage," Charles ordered. The space above Qatar erupted in chaos. Energy beams lanced across the void, tearing through hulls and igniting fusion cores. Fighters swarmed like angry insects, dodging and weaving through the debris field. Charles gripped the arms of his command chair as the Shadowrunner shuddered under enemy fire. "Push through their lines. We need to get to the surface." The ship plunged through the maelstrom, its stealth systems straining against the onslaught. They broke atmosphere in a ball of flames, alarms blaring as the heat shields struggled to compensate. On the ground, Tar's cities burned. Civilians ran screaming through the streets as Altair's loyalists fired indiscriminately. Charles led his strike team through the chaos, fighting their way to the heavily fortified command bunker. They battled through layers of security, Charles's muscles burning as he ducked and fired. The acrid smell of ozone and burnt flesh filled the air. Finally, they breached the inner sanctum. Altair stood before a massive control panel, his finger hovering over a red button. The Tarian leader's eyes blazed with madness. "It's over, Altair," Charles said, his voice steady despite his heaving chest. "Stand down." Altair sneered. "Never. I'll see your world burn, human." Charles held up a data pad. "Before you push that button, you need to see this." He played the intercepted communications, proving that Zorgax's atrocities were unknown to many Catarian colonies. Altair's hand trembled. For the first time, doubt clouded his features. "If you do this," Charles pressed, "you won't just be killing humans. You'll doom millions of your own people, innocent Catarian children who had no part in this war." The bunker shook as explosions rocked the surface. Altair looked from the button to Charles, indecision etched on his face. "It's your choice," Charles said quietly. "Monster or savior, what will your legacy be?" Altair's shoulders slumped. The fight drained from him in an instant. He stepped back from the controls, his voice a broken whisper. I surrender." As alarms blared and the bunker crumbled around them, Altair sank to his knees. He looked up at Charles, hatred and desperation warring in his eyes. "Mercy," Altair croaked. "For my people, I was wrong." Charles stood silent, the weight of countless lives heavy on his shoulders. The fate of 2 civilizations hung on his next words.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.